Welcome back to 80s Comics. Do you know what day it is? That's right, it's Yo-Joe-Tober. Every day around here is Yo-Joe-Tober. Take a trip with me back to 1987 when the question was not, do you want to hang out and read G.I. Joe? The question was, do you want to hang out and read more G.I. Joe? The answer is always yes, which is why they gave us more G.I. Joe with G.I. Joe Special Missions. Let's take a look at issue number 6 from August of 1987. It's incredible, and now you know, knowing is half the battle. The other half is stuff you don't know. Fighting for freedom over rocks and tundra, G.I. Joe is there in G.I. Joe Special Missions. Issue number 6 from August of 1987. A very cool cover design, unusual cover design for the G.I. Joe series. This issue is titled Evasion, and here's the creative team: Larry Hama, Herb Trimpe, and the rest of the crew. Herb Trimpe, of course, the artist of one of my new favorite series, Shogun Warriors. Mighty robots, mighty explosions. There's no mighty robots, but we do have plenty of explosions here in G.I. Joe Special Missions. This issue actually takes place right after G.I. Joe issue 61. So if you're a little bit confused as to how the team got captured and ended up in Borovia, then you need to read G.I. Joe 61. But this is actually a better comic book. Special Mission 6 is really good. And I typically like the Special Missions series because they're standalone stories. And even though this one kind of fits into the entire narrative, it's still more or less a standalone story that stars the G.I. Joe character Outback. And they don't tend to use Outback a whole lot, so it's pretty cool. Outback's the survivalist. And the rest of the Joes are getting roughed up here by the Borovians. They're Stalker, Snow Job, Quick Kick, getting hauled off in a truck, while Outback escapes in the sewers. Survivalist, using survival techniques. What are the Borovians going to do? Well, they're going to fill the sewers with gasoline and light them on fire. It's not a very nice thing to do. And check this out. This is from 1987. Scream! The rats are running away from the impending explosion in the sewers. They run past Outback, and this means that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade ripped off G.I. Joe Special Missions issue number 6. And now that I've posted this on the internet, it must be true. It's definitely true. I choose to believe it's true. And so does he. Outback wears a bandana well. He looks sufficiently crazy. Outback is, of course, smarter than a bunch of rats and smarter than the Borovians. So he escapes and pulls an old Snake Eyes move here. Actually, this has a bit of a James Bond feel to it. Like The Living Daylights, one of my favorite James Bond films. Totally underrated. If you haven't seen that one, check it out. Timothy Dalton in his prime, and a great Bond film. Awesome soundtrack from Aha, and just a pretty badass movie all around. So, if this was a Star Wars comic book, they would make an entire action figure based on this one panel. They cover Outback's survival t-shirt with a jacket and give him a pipe. He looks like a sailor. He looks great. Giving Shipwreck a run for his money. I think they're trying to make fun of the Soviet Union hot onion pie. That sounds good. Nothing about that sounds bad. I love Herb Trimpe's art style and think it's perfect for G.I. Joe. He illustrated the first issue of G.I. Joe and numerous other issues. The vehicles look really cool. The action and storyboarding is intense. It's really good as Outback escapes Borovia because he's got to alert the rest of the Joes and the American consulate as to the location and the incident that took place in issue 61. Because obviously they're going to rescue the Joes, right? You can't lose any Joes, because that means you have to throw away your action figures. You don't want to do that. This is a lot of fun to watch Outback survive in his survivalist t-shirt. It's actually a pretty cool character, as he outwits the idiotic Borovians using a bunch of dead chickens. And then, wearing no clothing, he hijacks a helicopter. You gotta admit, that's pretty cool. He smashes the controls and jumps out, and it's a lot of fun. This is a good standalone issue, even if it's not really a standalone issue. You can dive into this one if you're not that familiar with the series and have a good time reading about G.I. Joe and how much they kick ass, and how awesome the Cold War was, or at least how much fun it was that we remember it as it was. Not probably the way that it really was, but the way that it was portrayed in 1980s comic books and Rocky movies, at least. G.I. Joe Special Missions issue number 6 is highly recommended by 80scomics.com. Of course it is. So is the entire G.I. Joe series. You might want to get these two back to back, actually. And while you're at it, if you enjoyed the artwork, pick up the Shogun Warriors series, which is just wonderful in every way that anything can be wonderful. G.I. Joe Special Mission 6. Wasn't that fun? You know, they gave us G.I. Joe and the Transformers, which means that I'm automatically waiting for G.I. Joe and the Shogun Warriors. Wouldn't that be the greatest thing ever? It's never too late, Marvel. Get on it. Vanguard Ace and Radine versus Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes. You would sell like 30 copies of that. 2 of them to me. You gotta have one to frame. That just sounds so amazing.